US President Joe Biden on Monday urged Indian leader Narendra Modi not to increase his country's reliance on Russian oil and gas. Since Russia's invasion of Ukraine, India has tried to balance its ties with Moscow and the West. It hasn't put sanctions on Russia, unlike other members of the so-called Quad, including Japan, Australia and the US. And Biden's talks with Modi were part of the larger push to keep the pressure on Moscow for an invasion it calls a special military operation. US officials say Biden told Modi buying more oil from Russia was not in India's interests and could hinder the US response to the war in Ukraine.
The United States and India are going to continue our close consultation on how to manage the destabilizing effects of this Russian war. And I'm looking forward to our discussions today, Mr. Prime Minister. Our continued consultation and dialogue are key to ensuring the U.S.-Indian relationship continues to grow deeper and stronger.
A US official told Reuters that Biden stopped short of making a concrete ask of Modi on Monday. But they also said Biden told Modi India's position in the world would not be enhanced by relying on Russian energy sources. India has been lured by steep discounts after Western sanctions came in, snapping up at least 13 million barrels of Russian crude since late February. Data compiled by Reuters shows in the whole of last year they only bought 16 million. Later on Monday, India's External Affairs Minister pushed back on a reporter question on India's energy purchases from Russia and pointed instead to Europe.
I would suggest that your attention should be focused on Europe. I suspect, looking at the figures, probably our total purchases for the month would be less than what Europe does in an afternoon.
Modi also said he had suggested in recent conversations with Russia that President Vladimir Putin and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky hold direct talks.
Britain's Prime Minister Boris Johnson and his Finance Minister Rishi Sunak are to be fined for breaching strict coronavirus lockdown rules. That's according to the government on Tuesday. A spokesperson for Johnson's wife, Kerry, said she would also be fined. Police have been investigating 12 gatherings at Johnson's Downing Street office and Cabinet Office after an inquiry found his staff had enjoyed alcohol-fueled parties. The British leader said he attended a few of the events, but has always denied knowingly committing any wrongdoing. Sunak had also told Parliament he had not attended any parties. Some gatherings took place during a period of strict coronavirus rules ordered by Johnson's government. People were prohibited from attending funerals or saying farewell to loved ones dying in hospital. Keir Starmer, leader of the main opposition Labour Party, and Scottish First Minister Nicola Sturgeon both took to social media to call for Johnson and Sunak to resign. The Liberal Democrats called for Parliament to be recalled immediately from its Easter recess and for a vote of no confidence in Johnson. However, the Prime Minister's immediate future could well be determined by lawmakers in his own Conservative Party, who can trigger a leadership challenge. Earlier this year, a number of Conservatives called for him to quit as public trust plummeted over the Partygate affair and support for the government shrank.
Honda is set to spend big on electric vehicles. The Japanese firm says it will invest $64 billion over 10 years. It aims to roll out 30 new EV models by 2030. By that year, it wants to be making some 2 million per year. As part of moves to meet the goal, Honda plans to set up a dedicated EV production line in North America. It will also buy batteries from General Motors. The two companies will work together to produce a range of lower-priced EVs built on a common platform. It doesn't mean Honda is about to give up on conventional engines altogether. The company will keep making hybrids, pointing to the many markets where the infrastructure for EV charging just isn't in place. Tuesday's news is the latest in a series of big announcements by boss Toshihiro Mibe in the job for just a year. In March, he said Honda would team up with Sony to launch an electric car by 2025. Earlier, he set a 2040 target for electric and fuel cell vehicles to make up all sales.
In Senegal's capital Dakar, Astou Mandiang is preparing to break fast. But this year, there's no meat on the table. While Muslims celebrate the holy month of Ramadan, food prices in Senegal have been rising. Mandiang says fish, much cheaper than meat in the ocean-facing West African country, is the only animal protein she can afford. And she had to stockpile other ingredients in advance.
I bought foods that were likely to increase in price, such as onions. When I went to the market and saw the increase in onion prices, I was reassured to have it in stock, because I had anticipated it. It won't last until the end of the month, but it will last us a while.
Like many others, Mandiang has now turned to the kindness of strangers. Dimbel Jabut has been distributing food to families in need during Ramadan. Gang Sabore, the association's president, says the cost of a bag of rice has risen by 9.5% since last year.
Before Ramadan, a number of families contacted me. Some of them were crying when they called me and said it is very difficult. The price of rice has gone up, same for sugar and oil, so it's very difficult.
Food prices across West Africa have increased by between 20 and 30% over the past 5 years. Aid agencies say that's driven by a fall in production and availability. Drought and conflict have pushed millions off farmland, while the global health crisis disrupted supply chains. In addition, the war in Ukraine has caused a spike in global food prices.
An industrial zone in northern Syria's rebel-held city of Al-Bab has become an unlikely business hub. It's located on the edge of a city once occupied by Islamic State and now sits between a Turkish border wall to the north and a front line with Syrian government forces to the south. But the zone, one of 5 in the region controlled by Turkey-backed rebels, has become key to efforts to develop an economy hit by hardship and destruction during Syria's 11-year conflict. If successful, it could bring much-needed jobs and opportunities 6 years after Turkish troops and Syrian fighters drove Islamic State from the region and prevented a Kurdish force from filling the void. Abu Omar al-Shahabi says the iron bars his smelting factory makes compete with any produced in Syria and beyond.
I can compete with the Turks. If they allow us to enter our products to Turkey, we can compete with Turkish products because of cheap labour and raw materials that are expensive in Turkey, but cheap here. Because of the war and its aftermath, we have a lot of scrap metal. We have secure scrap, cheap labour, and establishing a factory is cheaper than in Turkey.
The industrial zone, home to about 30 factories and workshops, was established 4 years ago on the roads north from Al-Bab with the support of Turkey. Turkey hopes stability can encourage some 3.6 million Syrian refugees it currently hosts to head back across the border into Syria. But despite the cheap labour costs, businesses in the industrial zone face steep challenges. The area is still vulnerable to a possible offensive by Syrian government forces, while poor transport links and rising electricity costs hamper expansion. Shahabi's smelter is just a fraction of the size of his pre-war operation, which employed 150 people before it was hit in a 2012 air raid. Now it has just 25 workers, and production is down nearly 90%. Most products in the Al-Bab zone are sold within the northern rebel-held territories, although some do reach more distant markets across front lines or borders.